Welcome to FRC Updates Now. I'm your host, Tyler Olds. Joining me today is FRC Senior Director Collin Fultz. Collin's been in FIRST a long time, well, as long as I have, as we both came up in FRC together, and he's been the FRC Senior Director for about 4 months now, but actually started way back in 2011. You're going to hear more about Collin and his history leading up into the Senior FRC Director role, as well as some advice that he has for alumni and other people looking to join FIRST in the future. Collin also answers many of your questions that all of you submitted from the FRC community, and there's some very interesting answers, including some that will be impactful to the future of FRC. This video on FIRST Updates Now is made possible by viewers like you and also the following sponsors. If your team is using SolidWorks, make sure you log into the 3D Experience platform to gain access to tutorials, collaborate with other users, and download the ChargeUp field and kit of parts. Go to solidworks.com/first and click on Log into 3D Experience platform to gain access. At Kettering University, over 30% of the student population was in high school robotics. These same students have received a portion of over $7 million in scholarships. Scholarship applications for FIRST students are now available. Get more information at kettering.edu/first. Well, welcome to FRC Updates Now. I'm your host, Tyler Olds. Today we have on FRC Senior Director Collin Fultz, who's a alumni of FRC 234 Cyber Blue out of Indiana. Collin and I actually come up through the program together. We were both high school students right around the same time. And so it's really cool to have Collin back on here. Many of you don't know, too, a little Easter egg tidbit. Collin was like our first host on FUN way back in like 2015 when we were piloting things. So back in Spotlight days, Collin. So very excited to have you back on in a brand new capacity, talking more about FRC. Lots to talk about today. We're going to be learning more about Collin, talking more about 2023, including some top topics and discussions going on. And we have a whole bunch of questions from the FRC community. So Collin, thank you so much, man, for coming on. It's great to talk to you. And well, it's been only a couple days since we've spoken, but it's great to have you on air as well, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tyler. And yeah, I couldn't have imagined, back in 2015 when you started this and I helped out a little bit, that you'd have, the reach and the impact that you have now. So, I mean, honestly, congratulations. I think it's really cool to see what you've been able to do with this.
Hey, appreciate that, Collin. It means a lot. So we have a lot to jump into. So let's talk a little bit about you first, just for many of you who don't know you, as well as I have coming up through the days as well, too. As we mentioned, you're the FRC Senior Director now, but you had a long journey to get from there. We talked about you were a student on 234. Can you kind of lead us up from being a student into an alumni, and then kind of your journey from FIRST up to the FRC Senior Director position?
Yeah, absolutely. So after graduating from high school as a student on 234, I actually went to Purdue to get an engineering degree on a FIRST scholarship.
Nice.
That year, my first year at Purdue actually coincided with the first year of the Boilermaker Regional as well, which was the first regional event in Indiana. And so immediately just had this great opportunity to jump in and start volunteering at an event. And it was during our spring break, so didn't have to miss any class to do that. And it was on campus, which was great, and so was kind of immediately able to stay involved. My second year at college, I tried to mentor a team and was a college student mentor on Team 1747, and I just was not ready for that. My grades really kind of suffered, and so I was only able to mentor a team for 1 year, but that was a great experience for me and a real learning opportunity. But I was able to stay involved and continue to volunteer. So kept volunteering with the event. And then when I graduated college, started working full time and started mentoring 234 again, mentored them for a couple of years. And in 2010, saw a job to work as the first robotics competition kit of parts engineer open up at FIRST. And so applied for and got that job, started working in FRC in the fall of 2010. Worked there until early 2015, at which point I moved back to Indiana and took a different job working at an industrial automation company. But, like lots of people, immediately missed being involved in
Yeah.
FIRST. And so continued volunteering in Indiana as an MC. I really enjoyed doing that. And I also was asked to join and did join the board of directors for FIRST Indiana Robotics. At that time, it was called Indiana FIRST, but now FIRST Indiana. Um, and so was able to stay involved there. Actually restarted at first full time in the fall of 2016. First as a project manager for First Lego League, and was working on like managing a grant that we had received from the Lego Foundation that got 50,000 youth engaged in First Lego League Explore, which was a really cool project to be a part of. And then worked on what we called internally the First 365 project, which led to the creation of the First Lego League and First Tech Challenge class pack. Did that until 2019, when I moved over onto the development team at first, where I really kind of worked with some of our big sponsors, and then also led the team that administer all of our team grants and class packs. I think when you get a grant from NASA or DoD or Argosy or somebody like that, that team is kind of responsible for making sure the money gets to the right teams. Did that for a couple of years and then moved back into FRC last January, so January 2022, as program manager, working for Frank. Um, Moved into the acting director position in August of 2022, and then officially, moved into the director position in October. So that's, I don't know, however many years that is,
Yeah.
18 years of first in 30 seconds.
You have to be one of the most well-rounded like people in first. Is that common? Do we see other people in who work for first like go through as many different roles in kind of their workplace life cycle?
I think it's starting to become more the norm now where people are moving. Yeah. I think in terms of number of departments people have worked in and number of jobs people have held, I probably am at the far end of the spectrum there. But yeah, I think we're very much an organization that encourages professional growth and learning more and experiencing things outside of what you're currently doing. And so I think more people are doing that now.
Yeah, I mean, at least in my opinion, I think the importance can't be stressed enough of like how much experience you do bring that is FRC relevant as well too, or first relevant as well. And going through it, and I know we'll ask a couple questions from the community in just a little bit, but I think back to way back. 15, 20 years ago, that sort of thing, even going back to your family, where your dad, Chris Fultz, won the Woody Flowers Award as well, too, at a championship level as well. What is maybe an experience you can think of from a student that was really influential to you, to where you are now or through your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in terms of memorable moments, the 234 when I was a student won the Chairman's Award, so now First Impact Award, at the regional level in 2003 and 2004, and I was one of the student award presenters
Yeah.
for the team that year, and that was so that was a really exciting and memorable time, and I still have like photos of me and my friends on the team with the trophy and the banner and all of those things, which are fun to look back on. And then, yeah, the other memory that really stands out is the 2010 championship when my dad won the Woody Flowers Award, and I was there and in person, and got to experience that live and real time, and that was a really cool moment.
Yeah, I feel that emotion coming through for that, and I just can't imagine being there and be able to support your dad in that way. And what a cool experience that must be. One other thing I got to mention too. Speaking of Cyber Blue, there's another I think pertinent person from Cyber Blue around the same time, Ryan Donio, who owns ThriftyBot as well too, as a first supplier, also comes from Cyber Blue right around the same time as well too. So how cool to see people from 234 continuing to be involved in the program as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan and I were students on the team at the same time, 2003, 2004 time frame, and he's great. And I love to see what he's been able to do with his company. It's very cool.
A couple of questions from the community that had come in
Mhm.
that I also want to touch on. You mentioned one of the things was that you tried to be, or you attempted to do mentorship in your second year of college as well. And I know a question came in from Nate from 2363 that said, what role should young First alumni play in the story arc of First?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we love to say is, alumni are proof of the impact of First, and so I think sometimes we have to be careful to not imply that if you don't come back and volunteer, and if you don't come back and be a mentor, that you're somehow not proof of the impact of first. I think you can have your time in first and have it have a huge impact on what you do with the rest of your life, and not come back and be involved at all, and that's okay. And so to young alumni, I would say, like, there are almost 200 FRC events this year. There
Yeah.
are thousands of First Lego League and First Tech Challenge events this year, and so there are so many ways to get engaged and to stay engaged at whatever level of time commitment you're able to give. It doesn't have to be as much time commitment as mentoring a team. It can be, volunteering one weekend to judge at a First Lego League or First Lego League Explore event, which is some of the most fun that I've ever had volunteering, by the way, is judging First Lego League.
Yeah.
And that, there are a ton of ways for First to meet you where you are, in your life and in the world, and so whatever method it is that works for you is just wonderful.
I'll agree with you on that. I've been a event director for FLL events in the past, and I was a first senior mentor as well too. And I agree, getting involved in multiple programs is so important and very fulfilling as well too to
Mhm.
be able to experience that as well. Question
Yeah,
coming
I
in.
actually I coached First Lego League this year too with my son,
Oh, cool.
and so that's a whole new level of stress when you're when you're coaching your kids on an FLL team.
I can only imagine. Jumping into current role stuff for you, Mike
Mhm.
from 3487 was asking is, how have your experiences as a FRC student or kit parts engineer, or I'll add in any other part in first, informed your decisions and outlook in your current role?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've tried to bring to this role really a view from all of the experience that I've had, across my time in First. So both as a student, as a mentor, as a person that's volunteered, cross program, especially as a board member for First Indiana, and kind of seeing the challenges that we had to deal with as we were, and had to overcome as we were, kind of first starting off as an independent partner and first starting off with districts. My time in First Lego League and being part of, the First Lego League challenge development and helping make that program, more accessible to teachers who want to bring it into their classrooms and people who want to run it as, something in an after school setting. And then, from the development perspective as well, of working with sponsors and understanding, okay, what's important to them? How do you, make sure that you're meeting their needs and the
Yeah.
needs of First as an organization and us as a program? So I try to bring kind of a viewpoint from all of those different lenses, into the role.
Continue on some more questions. A little bit more about you from Matt on 4967. Asks, what's your personal top priority as the senior FRC director?
Yeah. So I mean, I think back to when we were, students on teams. I think, my first year in FRC, on 234, there were like maybe 6 or 7 teams in Indiana
Yeah.
total, and how lucky I was to live in the school district that had a team, that I could be a part of and to go to, because there were 2 high schools in my school district. One of them had an FRC team and one didn't when I was in high school. And how lucky I was to live in the one that had an FRC team. Um, in my opinion, you shouldn't have to be that lucky to get to experience being part of a first team. And so my goal, my top priority in this role is really to do what I can to make first robotics competition more sustainable, more scalable, and more accessible, so that more students can have the opportunity that I had when I was, a teenager.
And we'll talk about team sustainability a little bit later as well too.
Mhm.
But before we go into the 2023 game and a little bit of discussion on that, Zach from 4990 and a few others were asking, what's your favorite game of all time for FRC?
Oh man,
We both
I
got
feel
20
like,
plus years now, so
yeah, yeah. I feel like, I could name like 15 games that I really liked. I think if I had to choose one, it would be 2012
okay.
Rebound Rumble. That was the first game that I was really part of designing, and being part of, that game design team through the whole process of developing. Rebound Rumble was so much fun. And then being from Indiana, like of course I have a natural love at basketball, and
Right.
so the fact that we had basketball goals set up on the game design floor for the entire summer and fall while we tested robot designs and tested gameplay, was just great for me, as kind of marrying the two things that I really enjoy doing. And then I think the game itself, was pretty balanced. We hadn't done a ball shooting
Literally,
game
yeah.
like that. Exactly, yeah. There have been so many object shooting games lately that I think it's hard to remember back then how novel that was. There had
Yeah.
only been one object shooting game in the past, and so that was a kind of a really a new thing for teams to learn to deal with. And so that would be, if I had to pick one, it would probably be Rebound Rumble from 2012.
And Colin, you segue me so well into the next topic for this as well too, which is about game design.
Mm.
Love to hear more about your experience with game design. If you can talk about just maybe that brief elevator pitch of game design in general, and then anything for the future. I'm sure you can't tell us what the game is or anything like that, but maybe in regards to considerations for future years as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in terms of the game design process, we've got two core teams that really work on, designing games in kind of staggered parallel paths. So one who's, odd year and one who's even year. There is a ton of crossover between those teams for information sharing and reviews, just to make sure that we're not creating two games that are too similar to each other, which wouldn't be good, but then also not completely diverging either.
Sure.
um, we do, as part of that process, do external reviews, with folks, both from people who are kind of insiders to the program, who can look at the game and say, okay, did you think about this, did you think about this, this scoring seems kind of out of proportion to this other part. But then also program outsiders that we're able to bring in as well, to say, to look at the game as somebody who's maybe never seen it before, and say, oh, this part's a little confusing to me, can you help explain this, or what do we do in this area. Um, and so that's kind of the process that we use. We do in late fall, um, pause working on the game that's more than a year away, and combine the teams to really focus both on executing the season at hand. And so right now, like, we've paused 2024 while we execute 2023.
Sure.
Um, and that gives us also just one more time to do a final review of the manual, to have some chief volunteers look at it. And so that's kind of a high level of the process. I think in terms of things that we're considering, I think one of our big challenges every year is, how do we create a game that both challenges veteran teams, and has a new way for teams that have never done anything like this before
Yeah.
to come in and contribute to an alliance, and to have a meaningful experience and something that at the end of their event they can be proud of. Um, and so how we kind of span that bridge, that gap in terms of experience, is one of the real challenges of designing a game, and something we're always kind of looking to see, okay, did we do it well this year, it did, or did we not, what worked well and what didn't, and applying those learnings into future games.
And I think the general consensus, looking at last year in particular for 2022, I think the general consensus is you were able to accomplish that, where there was things that lower resource or newer teams, something like that, could be a great contributor to an alliance. And then the bar for teams as well too, ironically, wasn't as much of the traversal bar. It's just more how well you could cycle and score and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
But let's talk about 2023. You and I were both at the official Week Zero event on Saturday this past weekend. So what did you and your team take away from the Week Zero event in regards to the 2023 game? And is there anything that you're looking at? To ask a blunt question, is there anything that is potential changes for like either championships or anything that could happen earlier, or is that something that the game design team or FRC in particular does not consider?
Yeah, so we wouldn't consider any changes to the game after week zero, right? It's very much a test for us. It's a very relaxed event, and so and even more so for the teams, right? The teams are still very much kind of figuring things
Yep.
out, and so in terms of any changes that may come later in the season, like we'll at least get through week one before we start talking about that and seeing. I mean, I said it in a blog post earlier this week that like more than a third of FRC teams are competing week one this year, which is just an
Yeah,
insane number to me.
it is.
And so I think that after week one, we'll have a really good, a much better idea of how the game works. In terms of what we're looking for at week zero, we were really interested in, how did the cones and cubes hold up? And both held up, I think, better than we kind of were originally expecting, which is wonderful. The teams were really prepared, and that's always one of the big question marks is like, what level of robots are we going to see out here? And I mean, teams were, scoring in autonomous, they were balancing on the grid in autonomous, which was great. There were It was cool to see all the different methods of game piece collection that teams had come up with, and because that's something that you never really know about when you're designing a game, is will there be some design convergence here, or is there kind of a wider design space? And so I think the cubes and cones give you know give give some of that space for
Hmm.
people. And then there were several triple balancing as well, and the finals match came down to um, one alliance was able to keep all three teams on there, and one alliance wasn't, and that was the
Yeah.
outcome of the match, and it was very exciting. And so the fact that we had such exciting matches at what is essentially a preseason scrimmage, I think has a lot of us kind of cautiously optimistic for the game. You never know until it actually gets out there, but in terms of what we saw at week zero, I think we were pretty happy with it.
I do want to clarify something you said. So you said changes wise that wouldn't happen after week zero, but you would look at the game after week one. I'm not saying the game necessarily needs changes, but would
Mhm.
you look at potentially changing something mid-season or at championships, or like I guess what level, or DCMPs or something, like at what level would that consideration happen?
Yeah, I think that's one of those questions that everybody on the game design team and on the FRC staff has kind of a different threshold for making change. My personal threshold is pretty high for doing. I think there has to be something has to be really broken and really wrong to make a change partway through the season, even going into championship. I don't think it's fair to folks to start tweaking, things. But again, that it really kind of depends on the game.
Last thing I want to ask you about in regards to the week zero is that on a more official capacity, even though week zero, I don't know if that's considered official or not official, but is that the double elimination tournament happened. Very interesting scenarios too, as you mentioned before, where we had finals going to multiple matches and that sort of thing. So, what is the general? What is your take and your team's take on how the double elimination tournament went?
Yeah, I think overall it worked pretty well. We did not have awards to do because it was a preseason event. So we didn't have awards to put in the later breaks, which I think maybe made them feel a little longer than they would
Sure.
if you were handing out awards during that time. But in terms of the double elimination tournament specifically, and kind of one of the reasons that we liked it compared to the best two of three was like Alliance 8 made it to the equivalent of the semifinals after losing their first match to the number one seed. And so, you know, in kind of the old model, they probably would have been knocked out in the first round. And in a world where half of teams compete in the district model, like those points matter, in terms of advancing to district championship and the first championship. And then the seventh seed alliance lost their first match and then battled all the way back through the lower bracket to be
That was pretty
finalists
cool. Yeah.
and almost won, and
Yeah.
so the same kind of thing. Finalists matters for district points, it matters for wild cards at regionals. And so I'm sure we've heard stories and people have experienced part of that alliance selection for teams in the past was, which side of the bracket am I going to be on, and do I want to go up against the number one seed, or would I rather be 5 or 6 and be on the number one or the number two seed side of the bracket? And the fact that you don't have to worry about that as much anymore, or if at all, as part of your alliance selection strategy, right? You can just focus on building the best alliance and not have to try and play that game of which side of the bracket are you on. I think was one of the real benefits that we saw of that model. And it was interesting to see that it played out that way, on the first match or on the first event.
Yeah, and teams as well too. If you are watching this video, we'd love to see your comments on what you experienced or what you felt from the double elimination tournament. Love to see that. So comment that down below and let us know what you thought about it. Last question I want to ask you before we get into some more community questions that have been submitted is looking to the future. There's been a lot of questions in regards to using video replay or some sort of video analysis in the future as well. We didn't see anything this year necessarily in regards to updates for that. Is that something that could be potentially in consideration for future seasons?
So no, to be to be blunt about it, that's not on our roadmap for kind of implementation at events. I think, like I said at the beginning, my goal for the program is to make it more scalable and accessible, and a big part of that means making events more scalable and accessible. And I think adding video replay is not something that helps do that.
All right, appreciate that comment as well too, Colin. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's get into some questions from our community that have been submitted. Some more in there. We kind of broke this down in a few segments on here, so we'll get to as many as we can. We had tons of questions submitted, so there's obviously we're not going to be able to get through all of them, but I do want to cover as many as we can. Question I want to ask, we talked about sustainability before. There's a question coming in from both Andrew and Ari asking about what efforts are being made to contact teams that have either folded as a result of the pandemic or organizations considered loss, and anything in consideration of putting more focus towards sustainability of current teams as well too. We talk a lot about growth, but I'd love to hear you talk more about sustainability or reclaiming some teams that maybe gone away.
Yeah, absolutely. So there were a bunch of teams that participated in 2020 that have still not, come back, or were scheduled to participate in 2020 and have still not come back. And we are working. One of the good things about having kind of this centralized registration system is we know exactly who all of those teams are for first robotics competition and for FTC and FLL within the US. And so we are working, hand in hand with our program delivery partners in the regions of giving them that information so that they can do that, individual communication with those schools and those organizations to say, you know, are you interested in coming back? If not, why? Are there things that we can help you with? Find mentors, find funding, find build space, things like that. And if not, first robotics competition is first tech challenge a better fit for you. And so, working to bring those folks back into the organization. I think one of the challenges is, um, because it's been now a couple of years, we're potentially dealing with, the main teacher has left, or the main school administrator who was the real champion for the
Sure.
program has left. And so you're kind of effectively starting from square one. And so it could be a situation where even if that comes back, they are in effect a rookie team. And so it's not as easy as just, oh, they took 1 year off and they're back in the program the next year, or you're sustaining them year to year. You're almost completely starting over in a lot of places because of kind of the turnover that has hit the education sphere so hard.
Chris coming in from 1736 asking, what are some of the biggest short-term challenges that first or for you in particular FRC faces, and is there or how can teams help to help solve these problems or issues?
Yeah, I think honestly the challenges that First is facing are like not unique to First. And so there's been, kind of a real shift post 2020, and there are real headwinds now in terms of education, in terms of corporate philanthropy, in terms of volunteerism. And I mean, thankfully First has like 30 years of quality data on the impact that we have, right? We can speak to what the impact of our programs are, which can help us in those headwinds. um, but that's honestly a challenge across all nonprofits, I think. And so, specific to First and FRC, I think, as the program continues to grow, it becomes harder and harder to be a new person, or a new person involved with the program, or a new team. And so, like, in terms of what can teams do, it's making that extra effort to welcome and support new teams in the preseason, in the build season, during the event season, making them feel like they've got someone they can reach out to. And we're doing some of that as well, is helping pair up, new teams and veteran teams so that they have that kind of first person that they can talk to. And then um, I think the other thing that first teams can do is just continue to really be good examples of the first culture. I think that's one of the things that set our programs apart. Um, but that culture only survives if we all practice it all the time, right? It can't just be lip service or
Sure.
something that
Yeah.
we say at kickoff and at championship, but then it's not something that people actually experience. And so that's I think, a real opportunity for folks.
And chat, just so you know, our community, I'm probably not going to take too much time in regards to following up on these right now because we want to get to as many of your questions as possible. So I'll encourage you to type in questions in the YouTube comments as well too, or follow-ups or responses for that as well. A question coming in. This is a multi-tiered question, but it comes from Marshall on 900, so I wouldn't expect anything less from him on this. But he says, what's being done at HQ to ensure programs are in alignment with other technology stacks? Is there a roadmap for aligning the first program technologies? And have any other stakeholder groups been engaged or steering groups been created for this, or is there any consideration for that?
So I don't know about the last part of that for kind of stakeholder groups engaged. I have not been involved in that, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening. I think from a technology perspective, what we're really focusing on is making sure that the translation of the skills you developed in one program are clear when you're making that move. So if you're a first Lego League student and you're going to First Tech Challenge or you're going to First Robotics Competition, to make that translation of skills and that kind of to make that scaffolding really clear to you so that okay, here's what I did and here's how it applies, because we don't have like a clear set, right, of you do first Lego League till this grade, you do First Tech Challenge till this grade, you do First Robotics Competition to this grade. And so depending on where you are, where the point where you make those steps between the programs can be very different. And so we're trying to make that more clear.
Sure.
um, but then the other things that we're trying to do in terms of cross programmatic alignment, we're really kind of focusing right now on what does it mean to be a new coach in first or a new mentor in first, and how am I communicated with? What's that onboarding process look like, and bringing some alignment there. And I'll just share, like, as a first Lego League coach, like the team meeting guide and the guided mission were huge for me this year with my team. And so, looking at, what are different programs doing and what are the opportunities for us in FRC. And then also aligning kind of the volunteer experience and expectations, because, more and more of our partners are operating multiple or all first programs in a region, and it can be really frustrating if you're a partner trying to do that or you're a volunteer, that FRC volunteering is a little different than FTC volunteering and is a little different, right? And that can just cause some confusion. And so making sure that we're aligned as best we can, from a volunteer perspective, is a really key focus for us too.
Something I'll say that I'll give kudos to you and your team for is that you have developed a new landing page that kind of starts to provide resources for teams of kind of these how-tos. And we've seen some videos come out on the FRC YouTube page as well, sometimes from the other suppliers, sometimes from your team, in regards to kind of providing more into what to expect for things and how to do stuff. So yeah, definitely give some props to you and your team for doing that. I know Fiona was big on that landing page and getting that going. So I think definitely in the right direction for that, and excited to see what more can come out of that, and also cross implementing. The one thing I do want to ask you as a follow up on that is that we've seen an area like First in Michigan, for example, who does have very clearly stated age ranges for their programs, right? FTC is middle school, FRC is high school. Is that a consideration for the future potentially in First on a
Not that
global
I have,
scale?
yeah, not that I have heard of as global. I think we really rely on our partners to do, what works best for them in their regions.
All right. I'll go through a couple of these a little bit quicker on here, but Sean from 1712 asking, has First considered other modifications to the FRC schedule going forwards other than something like the removal of bag day? And how does First assess results from things like removing bag day in regards to is it successful, not successful? How do you look at those moving forward?
Yeah, so to answer the first part of that question, we're not really looking at any other changes to the schedule right now. In terms of assessing results from removing bag day, because of the cancellation of 2020, we lost our real good opportunity to compare, season before to season after, in terms of like hard data with surveys. I say, we're getting a lot of anecdotal feedback from folks this year, and last year, that they no longer feel like they have to build two identical robots to be competitive, and that was like one of the main driving factors of getting rid of bag day.
Sure.
And so, at least anecdotally, I think that change is, helping us achieve our goal there.
Uh, do you want to ask you a question? We got several people asking about championships and the future championships. Two in particular, Justin from 3015 and Ben from 3494. I'll combine these together, asking what are some future championship location considerations, and will FIRST ever consider something outside of the United States for either a championship or second championship, anything like that?
Yeah, so I'll just be honest and share that I don't know. I don't know to either of those. I know that we have announced in Houston for 2023 and 2024,
Sure.
and my efforts and brain space are going towards how can we make 600 teams in the George R. Brown Center a success for 2023.
So just to clarify, from like roadmap wise, looking forward right now, like there are no contracts signed or anything that's publicly shareable in regards to future locations yet.
Not that I know of.
Sure. Going a couple things in regards to more of the KOP area or resources for teams, that sort of thing. A question from Justin on 2713 asking, will FMS and or the driver station ever be open sourced in the future?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know that open sourced is really something that we have looked at or talked about as part of the work that went into making this double elimination tournament work this year. We had a group of volunteers that helped with the development work required to basically build that in FMS, and so and had just a great experience with them. And so I think there's a potential opportunity there to continue to engage more volunteers in work that has traditionally only been done by FRC staff. um, and so I think that is more of what we're looking at in the short term. I don't think that completely open source for FMS or the driver station is something that we're looking at right now.
So FMS is been around for a long time now, and is there like potentially a new set of software that might be replacing FMS in the future coming out?
I mean, we will always need a field management system,
Yeah, but
right?
I'm saying like the current iteration is like a decade old, essentially, right? Like the base structure of it is.
Sure. And that's one of the things that we're exploring now is with this group of volunteers, and are there more that we can engage to help do more of that modernization?
Sure.
Yeah.
Joe from 987 asking, will more economical and accessible team field versions be prioritized as part of the game design goals in the future?
Mm. Yeah. So that answering that question of how are teams going to build this in their shop or in their practice space is one of the things that goes into the game design process very early. And we have height requirements for scoring elements and things like that based on survey data that we've gotten from teams about the size of practice space that they have available. And so our goal is that teams can build a representative part of the field. Economically, some years honestly we do better than others in that, but that is absolutely something that we keep in mind from the beginning of the process all the way through.
And I think, in my opinion, in particular, the one thing I've heard from a lot of teams is the charging station being so important to being like more that field accurate type versus more the economical type. So I don't know if that's where Joe's question comes from necessarily, and Joe's been around a long time in the program as well too. But a lot of times when I talk to teams this year, I'm seeing areas like in Texas where they're literally just having these like 3 teams all across Texas making field accurate ones, so teams can experience that because that's something they've left out on. So it will be interesting to see, of course, on our ends, what future games look like and how that all pairs in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the the charge station on the practice field at events is the same as the real one as well. So we do try there. We completely understand that that's an important piece, and so that was important for us to make sure we provided that to teams on the practice field as well. So that if you didn't have that capability in your shop, you at least do on the practice field at your event.
And Colin, last question to ask you for today. This is something that has been a big contention with your predecessor as well. Is you know where this is going. So, how does Caltran asking in chat? How does Colin feel about pineapple on pizza?
So yeah, this is probably where Frank and I differ the most. I am a huge fan. I think that Hawaiian pizza, especially if you can drizzle a little bit of hot honey on it, is
Ooh,
absolutely
wow.
fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, sorry, Frank, but I am very very much in favor of Hawaiian pizza.
Well, it's a new direction and a new day for FRC apparently. So, Colin,
Yeah.
thank you so much for hopping on to tell us more about yourself. Give us some insight in regards to how FRC operates and first operates well too. I want to congratulate you on the role. I know you're only just a few months in, but I know the community is definitely looking forward to seeing what you and your team has to bring for the future. So, congratulations so far, and can't wait to see more of the changes that are coming and keeping some of the great stuff moving forward. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. And if I can, like before we go, you mentioned, me and my team, and that like nothing could be more true. Like FRC, the FRC team is awesome. I'm lucky to get to work with them, and so many of these things that you talked about are initiatives that are being driven by members of the team that are alums or are volunteers or are current mentors, and really doing what they can to make the program work. So I'm lucky to get to work with them every day, and just wanted to give them a shout out here at the end.
Absolutely. Huge shout out to everybody helping make FRC possible. And can't wait to see what you all bring. Thanks, Colin.
Yeah, thank you.
This video on First Updates Now is made possible by viewers like you and also the following sponsors. If your team is using SolidWorks, make sure you log into the 3D Experience platform to gain access to tutorials, collaborate with other users, and download the Charge Up field and kit up parts. Go to solidworks.com/first and click on Log into 3D Experience platform to gain access. At Kettering University, over 30% of the student population was in high school robotics. These same students have received a portion of over $7 million in scholarships. Scholarship applications for FIRST students are now available. Get more information at kettering.edu/first. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay up to date on our new videos. Keep the conversation going and provide your input to our content. Watch our live shows at twitch.tv/First Updates Now. Join our Discord at discord.gg/First Updates Now. And check out FUN FTC on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And First Updates Now on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter.